Okay, here we go. So this Tuesday I'm going to take you through a banded workout. So walk through the workout. It's not a workout to follow right now. It's to refer back to later, to have a look at variations of the exercises, and to complement a program guide I'm going to bring out later this week. Similar to the bodyweight one I did last week, and actually the two will integrate pretty well to give you workout options, resistance based, either with bodyweight or the bands to use at home. Now, bands are a great tool. Use them quite a lot at the gym to add resistance to kind of standard exercises you'd see at the gym. So we've got this thicker type, which, depending on the colour scheme you get, you'll have different colours represent different strengths. So the red one here goes up to the black one next, is thicker, and then purple's thicker on top of that. And I have this really strong green one as well. Don't use that very often. So different strengths of band are going to be appropriate for different exercises. You'll also probably be familiar with the stretchy band for warming up. This is usually called the physio band, what a physio would give out for rehabilitation exercises. Someone like a physio or sports therapist would say, do these exercises to sort the shoulder out, knee out, whatever it is, and do them in this way. Now this is something I've used quite a lot as the mobility warm-up for a lot of workouts and a lot of the programs. And that, you've probably seen before, does look like 4 different moves with the band. And the idea is these are stretches. So we can start with this band, stretching out, up and over. So we're getting the upper body warmed up, moving the joints across. And usually I'd say do for 10 of each movement. Now this band can also be used for some of the exercises we're going to be doing. Either hold it tighter, or actually it's going to provide the right amount of extra resistance to body weight exercises. So if you are struggling to get hold of some of the other bands, then this sort of band will be a good substitute, potentially while you're waiting for delivery. Just say at this point, I've used these bands quite a lot, and some other trainers have as well. Sometimes in the gym you get funny looks, but they've really come into their own in this situation of training at home, in that they don't take up much space, they're relatively cheap compared to buying weights and getting enough weights to create the resistance you might need. And yeah, they're very complementary to regular workouts in the gym anyway, so a great tool to get that you'll be able to use for years to come for your training and for different things. So having done some sort of warm-up, whether it be with a physio band, upper and lower, the squats and stretches, ideal, that'll all be in the program. Then we'll go into a workout. Now, I'm going to take you through basically what could be a full body workout plan. You can also, with adding the resistance, split this up into a kind of more traditional style of training where you might train one body part or 2 body parts together, and I'm happy to put that together, and you certainly recognise some of the movements and be able to connect it with other exercises you've done in a class or in the gym, and say, okay, I can see how that replicates that machine or that movement. And we can't always replicate things really well. We're going to have to work around some things, and that's why in the bodyweight program and in this program, sometimes we need to stack exercises together to get the right stimulus for that muscle group. That does mean they're actually quite efficient and working out in terms of, in a sense, resistance training, bodybuilding in inverted commas, with bodyweight and resistance bands. The workouts actually might be quite short. Some of that is because you're actually doing it all in place. You haven't got to move around, you haven't got to load plates onto the machine. Your periods of transitioning between exercise and resting can actually be quite short. That's not to devalue the fact of the exercise. Workouts and training sessions aren't, the effectiveness of them doesn't need to be based on the time that they take. So yeah, that's one thing to put in here. You might just train chest and shoulders together, and it might only take 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour using bands and body weight. That's absolutely fine. It's about the stimulus, about the intensity, and about the recovery, and moving on to repeat and improve, progress those movements and the exercises you've been doing. So I'm going to talk through some progressions and some ways of putting these exercises together into different sets. So we've said about chest and shoulders. Let's start with some chest variations. Now, bodyweight training for the chest, we focused quite a lot on the press up last week, and I also put out another video of how to then scale the press up back to build up to be able to do full press ups. Another way of scaling that kind of chest press movement and also the flies coming across the body is to use the band standing up or sitting down. Quite like standing up. Now, I'm going to use these bands quite a lot as loops with the hands inside. It's important just to get that comfortable without any kinks. And for this one, we're going to put the band across the back in this sort of position. I'm going to have it quite low on the back, so we can keep the elbows or over shoulders. That is actually the ideal position for a press up. It's also the ideal position for any sort of kind of bench press or dumbbell press movement involving the chest, so either flat or incline, or even decline for that matter. The elbows want to be down below the level of the shoulders. So this standing chest press, we'll stand up nice and strong and with a strong core, and we're literally going to press out to the front. We're going to keep some width, and we're going to press. That's quite a good resistance, and I'm only using the first stage, the red band. That's great. From there, as a superset, going from a compound movement, we can go straight to an isolation movement and go into the flies. Now, if we're doing dumbbell flies, lying down, I'd want to keep the dumbbells above the shoulders to keep that tension on. With the band, the tension doesn't stop, so we can actually come together, and this is the beauty of bands. We're going to get a stronger resistance curve the more we stretch the band. So that fly movement comes all the way across. We can even slightly cross over to get a really good squeeze, even more so. We change the angle, come from low to high. So there's lots to play with, just with putting the band into a standing position. We then transfer that into a press up without adding resistance. So take that to the ground, make sure the band stays stable, keep the hands back. We can get into a press up position, adding the band, squeezing into the top, extra resistance at the top of the movement, which is actually our strongest position to press up, is at the top. That's the plank position. It's the least pressure tension on the chest at that point. We're now increasing the tension greatly with adding the band. This could be a set then where you do some with the band, take the band away and go into basically a bodyweight press up. We've actually dropped the resistance, we've already done the work, so you're increasing the intensity and the time that you're working the muscle. Another method we can use is to actually lie down with the band behind the back and press from the floor. If you've got a bench or something that you can use that's quite stable to lie on, by all means use that. We can press from the floor. We can also then do the flies from the floor. We could put together a combination. It could be that we start with banded press up, taking that almost to failure, keeping 1 or 2 reps in what's reps in reserve, then going to the floor press, straight in again, pushing round, then into the flies. We can take the band away and go into free press ups at the full or knee, and working the muscle fibres through the chest in a really thorough fashion by stacking exercises together. You can raise the feet up, raise the hands up, all sorts of combinations that could complement what's already in the bodyweight workout plan. We're putting the two together. So opposite to the chest is looking at the back. So to do any banded kind of pull movements, either working through the back, mainly pulling it towards you, you're going to have to anchor the band somehow. You've got to pull it towards the body. No straightforward one, but actually quite complex in terms of getting set up, is a banded bent over row. So If you've used trap bar deadlift, in a sense we're going to go down to the bottom position of that. You might have done rows in a class as well, pulling the bar towards you. It's not massively commonly used in the gym, other than with machines, because of the pressure it can put on the back when you're using a weight. It's not the same pressure using a band, because the band tension goes off at the bottom. So, side on, we're going to come back into a squat, but really tip forward. So back is flat, and we're going to roll up to the sides. We're pulling the elbows and hands backwards, more towards the hips. So tip with rows is the thing. I'm coming back to the hips. In a sense, I'm scooping back. That's the same whether with a band or with dumbbells. From there, as we've done in some of the workouts in MW Fitness online, you can hold one side, row with one side, swap over, and that's just a technique to increase the tension of the exercise that you're doing, and increase the tension through the time that you are doing that exercise. So, another way to use a band is to get an anchor point. Now, generally around the house, a low anchor point is quite easy to come by. Under the sofa here, under the bed, on a corner if you've got that sort of design bed on a foot, things like that. Kind of mid and high anchor points, a little bit harder to come by. Door handle possibly, but we're putting quite a lot of resistance through that. We don't want to do any damage to your house, apartment, wherever it is you live. If you've got access to outside space, you might well find some good anchor points in terms of a fence, a tree, a higher point, a lower point. Yeah, there's different options there. But we're just going to assume today that for most people, it's going to be easiest to set up a low anchor point. So from here, I've got red band. Generally, ball movements we could be a little bit stronger. So I'm going to add the black band. And if it is the case that the black band or a higher, heavier band is right for you to use, then we can automatically set up a drop set of working with one band and then down to the next. So, I am going to anchor with this band, still having my feet on the sofa, because the resistance of the black band will still actually move the sofa without, if my body weight isn't resisting it as well. Same principle in terms of your back, up nice and tall, and we're pulling back. Hands actually want to stay relatively low. So we've got at the top of the movement a 90-degree bend. Don't want the hands coming up too high, when actually coming straight back into that position, into there. Could apply that isometric hold again if we wanted to. And as I'm sat here, you can see that the anchor point can be around your foot. What you don't want is it to be slipping off your feet and coming back at you, because it's got to have quite a high, with the resistance, it's got quite a high elastic potential to come back and hit you. So a set here might well be rows with one weight of band, with one strength of band, drop in set, and drop set into a lighter band. Now from here, with a lighter band, we could then go into a higher row. So we're going to turn the hands over, we're going to pull much higher up. So working into the upper back and the rear deltoids, the back of the shoulders. So potentially there, we've stacked 1, 2 or 3 different exercises, different resistance together to work really well through the back. Bent over rows, could do those first and come and sit down, or we could go to those afterwards. So, working through the legs next, we're going to focus on some quad variations where we can add the resistance. So, in the bodyweight workout, we did a lot of different foot positions, split squats, things like that. In this one, where you've got a resistance band, some of the dynamic exercises we can leave out and just add the resistance to it. Now, dynamic is what I mean by that is the jump squats and the jumping lunges. They're not appropriate for everyone, but adding resistance to a good squat movement pattern is a way of getting progression. So that could be using the band, Most of us generally stronger through a lower body. We're going to judge the width of our feet. We can pull a little bit more tension into the band if we wanted to, in between. And we're going to stand up tall. We're going to get a nice bit of body work from this as well. Holding that. We're going to squat down and squeeze back up. That extra resistance coming into the quads. So just taking a bodyweight squat, adding that extra resistance, and the resistance comes on through the strength curve of the exercise, and actually the stronger the higher we get, we're adding more resistance the higher we get, we're going to get a different stimulus. Could do it with the black band and then drop straight to the red band. Then we could be doing a bodyweight variation, or bringing in that close stance then to a wide stance, and stacking exercises together. It's about working out which is the best way for you to get the right intensity of work through your quads if you're doing this sort of workout. A real big favourite of mine is using these bands to work the glutes. Now, put the hip thrust and glute bridge variations into the Thursday night workout. Some of you will have done this with me, where the usual means of adding resistance to a hip thrust might be to use a Smith machine or a free bar, pad over, and you're up and down. The double banded hip thrust, or just using the resistance banded hip thrust, is a great variation. And I've had people say, and clients say, actually they find it feel more tension and more work in their glutes from the bands than they do from putting a weight across their hips and doing the workout there. So the way we add this is under the feet and up and round. Now, an analogy I always use, or often use, without thinking, is you put your feet into the resistance band in the same place you put your feet in the stirrups if you're riding a horse. But not everyone had the privilege of growing up riding like I did. So it's not a very good analogy. We're going to try and get it just into the front of the instep, or really wherever's comfortable under your foot. Now, it takes a bit of a pull to get these on. So actually what we're going to do, I'll pop the towel around for a bit more comfortable usage. And I'm going to pull this up and over my hips. And now it's sat up as high as possible. This is where actually wearing leggings to work out is an advantage, that you haven't got this rubber band now pulling against hairs on your leg if you're a man. You can also add the resistance loop band if you've got that to the knees, and that's where the name the double banded hip thrust comes in. And then everything else is the same as a normal hip thrust. You get down into position, shoulders on, chin down. You might want to hold the band or your towel to make sure it stays up, and you're squeezing up against that resistance. Once again, the resistance is coming on in the contracted position. That's exactly where we want it. That's where we want the most resistance to be, in the tightened, contracted position. So we can go there. If you've got one of these on, you can have this on. You could do your reps, you could do a hold, and then you could go straight into hip abduction as well. So we're stacking exercises together into supersets, into triceps, to get a really good effect. Equally, we can do exactly the same with a band for a glute bridge. And we could be popping that on in the same way. Setting up on the floor. Get that resistance band in the right sort of place. And then good squeeze up. Adding that resistance in the contracted position. Well, there we go. Muscles work by contracting, they work by shortening, and then they relax. And we can reverse the movement because of that relaxation part. We'll control that relaxation part. That's another technique for intensifying is to slow down the what's called the eccentric, essentially the relaxing part of the movement. But if we focus on the contractions first and getting a really good contraction, we can add that technique of slow eccentrics later on, and I've been using it more and more in some of the NW Fitness online bodyweight workouts to increase that intensity when we're just using bodyweight. Same can be applied with resistance, but we'll work that in over time. So, moving on body parts wise, let's go to the glutes. Sorry, that was the glutes. We're going to go to the shoulders. Actually, bands are quite versatile for the shoulders, and yeah, there's quite a lot you can do. These loops being the length that they are, it's probably a little bit difficult to get in a good position for presses in terms of pressing upwards. You could do something like that, but hand position is not ideal. One way around that is using the low ankle point again, and having your low ankle point, spinning yourself round, and making sure you're not going to lift up your anchor point, the sofa in this case, and pressing up into a more traditional kind of shoulder press type of movement. There we go. From there, actually, isolated movements are what's really good with a resistance band. So we can stand in it, have as much of the band available as possible, because this will get quite intense quite quick. And upright rows are a really good banded option. We don't have to get the hands that high. We're looking at the elbow height and working into the shoulders. That's really good. Like I say, we're focusing on the height of the shoulders. If you look at the top of the movement, that's the same position as a lateral raise, which is a common isolation movement for shoulders. The upright row for some people is actually a better movement, and the shoulders actually come up to the right position much more easily in terms of their brain telling their body what to do, because you're just pulling up and slightly out. From there, quite a good therapeutic movement, as much as it isn't a good exercise, is the Y raise at the front, which is we stand in the loop and we come up and out. That's going to give you some great shoulder work into the deltoids, into the upper back, the rear deltoids, that's the bit of the back, and lifting that up. And then from there, like one of the warm-up stretches, working the rear delts even more, just going to hold the band in a single loop, and just going to pull right out, and you're just going to judge the resistance, pulling across. So a band pull apart. So if we did those 4 exercises back to back, say 10 reps of each, you've worked really thoroughly around the whole shoulder complex. Shoulders particularly are groups, or is a group of small muscles, intricate movement, there's lots of movement going on there, there's lots of muscles to control the different directions, working them in different planes of movement, like we've just done with doing presses, upright rows, Y raise and band pull apart, is going to work all those different muscles in the different planes of movement in a really good way. So, moving on to that kind of final body part, and always joke for the guys particularly, you'll see them in the gym doing arms on a Friday night because they're going to be going out Friday or Saturday, and yeah, they want their arms to look as best they can in a t-shirt or a shirt or whatever. But working arms is always good in terms of improving other exercises. So it's not something that I've always majorly focused on in my own training and with clients, because biceps and triceps aren't a massive body part, but improving the strength in that area will then have a knock-on effect of improving other movements, and then that's got the whole overall effect of improving your movement patterns and strength with exercises that might be deemed actually more important and more beneficial to strength, fat loss, calorie burn. So, looking at arms, looking at triceps first, we use the band by stepping, having it round behind on this one, and then we're going to kind of bring it up and round, getting it comfortable. You might end up with a twist in it, can't even see the band right now, but that band's behind my head and I'm squeezing up. That's the tricep extension, like you might do with a dumbbell or on a cable at the gym. Really effective. We're actually really lengthening the tricep and squeezing it up. Side on, my foot stays in, there we go. Hands go down behind, squeezing up. And the elbows as high as possible, upper arms as high as possible, straight up as much as they can. They're going to flare out slightly. There we go. That's that one. And then we can look at a band tricep kickback. Now, often this exercise is done quite badly in the sense of the arm is in constant motion. If we slow that down, as I try and encourage everyone that I do this with in the workouts, it is a good movement when it's done right. So we're going to come down to partially the bent over row position, and either one arm or two together, we're going to lift up slightly, we're going to pull the elbows up, and then we're going to squeeze back. And the great thing about bands for some movements is it actually encourages you to squeeze and hold more consciously than if you were moving with a dumbbell, because we naturally push against resistance. So the resistance comes on, we're pushing back. Another way of doing that, scaling that down, is to have a single loop, a little bit of slack in front of you, go to exactly the same position, lift the elbows up and then squeeze back. The reason I have a slack in front of you is because that's going to come around the body. So the elbows up, squeezing back, squeezing back. And then onto the arms. Sorry, the biceps. We're already on the arms, that was the triceps. Onto the biceps. A couple of different movements, or three main movements we can do. We can modify the row, keeping the fingers up, down, and little squeeze into what I call a bicep row. We're engaging the biceps, pulling up. Then we can bring ourselves around a little bit taller, and we can keep a little bit less resistance in there. So I can actually do the movement. Thumbs up, hammer curl, and then switching that round to an more open-handed curl. Just like to come slightly wide and slightly in. We can switch to alternating cross body, give yourself a bit of space, squeeze in. You can do it together, more like a crab curl, grabbing it in. Make it look like I've got pincers at the front. So, lots of variations, similar to training in the gym, with lots of variations to use. There's none that are, there's some that will be slightly superior to others, but it's whatever works best for your body and your mechanics, and putting that workout together with bands and maybe using body weight as well. It's going to look slightly different for everyone. So in the program guide, the band and body weight program, similar to one I brought out last week for body weight, there'll be lots of variations. There's separate videos for each section, including more variations in terms of high ankle points, mid ankle points for back. I've filmed them outside, done as many different variations as I can. Once again, when I send that out, if you would like support and guidance to put a workout together appropriate for you, please give me a shout, mark@mwfitness.net, or send me a message or comment in the group of how can I implement using the bands that I've got from eBay, I've got from Amazon, into my personal workout routine. Thanks guys.